If you're getting ready to unleash your amazing LLM-powered feature onto the world, or if you're in early phases of planning your product but want to know what it takes to run generative AI at scale, this video is for you. First, some basics. Large language models, or LLMs, are part of new wave of AI, and generative AI in particular, and they have one amazing skill: processing text. The easiest way to think about it is they're really good at guessing the next most likely word. That may sound like a narrow skill, but at Neferdata we believe that skill can be very transformative for multiple business use cases that could previously only be solved with very expensive software. Some examples include extracting data from invoices regardless of the format, processing shipping labels, including physical ones, or creating knowledge search across all of your company information. LLMs also require slightly different techniques and approaches when it comes to running in production compared to traditional software projects. The one thing that is pretty common is that you probably shouldn't think about those until you have a working solution. There also might be a way of being ready for the technical future without getting too much distracted from the business value today, but more on that later. Now, let's dig in. In our experience, we have seen 5 high-level categories of the challenges you may face. First, the cost. Those per-token charges can add up pretty quickly, and running your own GPUs isn't necessarily a low-cost alternative either. You probably don't want to be using the most complex model for every task, and you likely want to experiment with different vendors. Well, that requires a multi-model setup. Another popular technique of eliminating cost is reducing the number of requests you make to the LLMs. This is where caching comes in. And in the case of LLMs, there's this new concept of semantic caching. Next, let's talk about accuracy. You probably heard stories about LLMs hallucinating or being lazy. This is a function of how they're trained. They're incentivized to always give you a very confident answer for the least amount of tokens possible. Once you understand how they work, you can deploy some techniques to prevent those issues. System prompts are a great way of putting the model in the right context. And using RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation, is a great way of anchoring all of the responses to your data. Last, you'll be using lots of prompt engineering, and there are some great online trainings on prompt engineering that I highly recommend checking out. But a quick aside on prompts. You will probably be experimenting a lot and changing the prompts regularly. It is important to keep the information about all the prompts that you've used and the impact that they've had not only your current data, but on the historical data as well. I call that prompt lineage. You might have experienced that the LLMs can be a little bit slow, especially if you factor in all the orchestration needed to make the assistant flows possible. Additionally, the vendors are not yet at the maturity level that we're used to from other cloud services. Some techniques to deal with that. We recommend breaking down the tasks into smaller chunks. We also recommend processing things in parallel where possible. Lastly, smaller, more specialized models perform better, but to be able to have those, you need to start collecting training data early. A common challenge of incorporating LLM capabilities into broader software ecosystems is that, contrary to the traditional software components, they're not deterministic, they're probabilistic. This means that they can give you a slightly different answer every time you run them. It is something you have to deal with. At Neferdata, we've used techniques like type or logical validations coupled with automated retries. We also recommend using human-in-the-loop approaches wherever appropriate. Last, but certainly not least, let's talk about data privacy. Large language models require vast amounts of data to be trained on, and vendors often collect your data to make the models better. Now, that might be perfectly acceptable for many of your use cases. For others, you may require a higher level of confidentiality. We recommend carefully reading the fine print, and also using local models for the more confidential use cases. As you can see, there's lots of things to consider when thinking of taking our LLM-based solution to production. Fortunately, there's Neferdata. With our platform, these capabilities come pre-packaged, letting you focus on generating the business value. If you'd like to learn more, visit our website or reach out to us directly.